All right, what do we got here? Matt says, you've argued about not basing your career decisions on passions. But what about one's temperament, specifically under the Big Five personality model? If one is low in conscientiousness or particularly high in openness, how should that be considered to avoid getting into an ill-suited role? All right, so I put this back to back with Larry's question because they're both dealing with careers and they're both dealing with ideas from my book, So Good They Can't Ignore You. Now, I think what's happening here, again, is too strict of an interpretation of what I am talking about. So in So Good They Can't Ignore You, I reject what I call the passion hypothesis, which is this idea that the primary factor in generating a feeling of fulfillment or passion in your career is matching the type of work you do to the pre-existing passion. If you can match your work successfully to what you're meant to do, you will find your work fulfilling. And if you get this match wrong, you won't. That was a dominant hypothesis when I was writing So Good They Can't Ignore You. It is a dominant hypothesis today, though I would say not as strong now as it was back then. It's often summarized with the axiom, follow your passion. And I argued that's wrong. Now, Matt, I think you're taking that argument and you're pushing it farther to say, okay, nothing really matters. Nothing intrinsic at all matters for whether or not you're going to like your job. And that's actually not true. I'm pushing back against a strong form of the matching hypothesis that a match to a pre-existing passion is all that matters. And I'm saying, no, it's more complicated than that. The choice of job is not trivial, but it is not the single determinant factor of whether or not you end up passionate about your work. The real important stuff happens after you choose your job. Do you build rare and valuable skills like we talked about with the last question? Are you applying those rare and valuable skills as leverage to move your career towards things that resonate and away from things that don't, towards your ideal lifestyle and away from traps that you want to avoid? Are you crafting your career in a way that is consistent and complements your vision of a deep life? If you're doing this, that's very hard work. It takes time and strategy over many years. That is where real passion grows. The actual initial choice of the job is just the first small step in that long journey. That's really what I'm arguing. However, making that first small step, choosing what job you want to do, that's not throwing a dart at a job listing board and saying it doesn't matter at all what job I have. You still want to think about it. So your temperament, yes, it matters. Pick a job that's better suited for your temperament. Do you like to be around people? Do you like to be alone? Sure. So your personality matters. Skills you already have matters. If you're coming out of school with a math degree and you're pretty good at it, well, that's going to get you some career capital much faster than if you become a yoga instructor. So pre-existing skills matter. A general interest in the field, sure, that matters. You know, like I'm interested in academia, seems romantic to me. So, that is a mark in favor of going to graduate school. All that stuff matters. So use what you have when making your choice, but keep in mind that there may be many different jobs that make sense for you to pursue. And once you make the choices, what happens next is ultimately going to decide whether or not you get fulfillment out of it. So Matt, you can take your temperament into account, take your skills into account, interest into account. I'm a big believer in looking at what would the opportunities be if and when I get really good at this job. And do I see down the line opportunities that are really going to give me a lot of control over my life or open up the things that are really important to my ideal lifestyle? That's all critical. Don't just throw a dart, but don't think that the choice by itself is all that it takes to love your work, and don't over sweat that choice. There's usually many right answers. The issue is not I'm going to choose the wrong job. The real issue for most people is I'm going to do the wrong things once I have a job. All right. I think we've had a bunch of men in a row, so I have some women here. Look at this, 3 in a row. I did this by accident, but actually we had a run of men. Now we'll have a run of women asking questions. So let's actually get to some reasonable questions then.